Hey everybody, Joe here from Avalon Accounting, and today we're answering a question that we get a lot, which is, should I invest inside my corporations? Spoiler alert, it depends. So if you're just looking for a quick answer, that's the answer for you. But if you want some detail there, I'll break down the sort of four and a half-ish factors to consider and break those down so you can apply this to your situation. So all that and nothing else coming right up. All right, so the first factor you're going to want to consider is how much of your original capital are you going to retain? So whether that's within a corporation or if you're paying out dividends or salary to you personally, how much money after paying that tax is left over for you to actually invest? And if you've ever, done any sort of investment courses, the more capital you have at the beginning, the more that can grow. So you want to retain as much capital as you can, because as soon as you pay it to the government, guess what? They're not going to give it back. So really important to consider this part. So in a corporation, you're going to retain quite a bit of that capital. So here in BC, we have an 11% small business tax rate, which is fantastic. And it tends to be quite low all the way across Canada. So no issue with that. You do retain a lot of the capital within your corporation if it's active business income that it's developed from. You will retain, in BC, 89% of that capital. So that's a plus side for investing inside the corporation. You got a larger chunk of that to work with. On the flip side, if you're paying that out personally and you're investing personally, you're gonna have to take that money out of the corporation, either through dividends or salary, and then invest it. And if your marginal tax rate's 40% or 30%, you can see already that you've already whittled away a lot of that original capital. So it's really hard to make up those sort of tax payments that you've made already to get to the same growth amount that you would have inside the corporation. But all is not lost within your personal side. So if you have RSP contribution room, this is actually the most tax efficient way to create that original capital. And the way you do that is this. So you pay through salary to yourself personally, you create RSP contribution room, and then you put that money into an RSP that you would invest otherwise. You retain 100% of the capital, and plus anything that's growth within that investment is not taxed until you start taking it out. So you grow more, you have more at the beginning, and then all of your gains or investment income is tax-free. So that's the most efficient way. But if you don't have RSP room, or you're just totally opposed to paying yourself a salary, investing inside the corporation might be a good idea. All right, so the second factor that we want to consider is, what is the tax rate on this investment income? So we covered RSPs and how you wouldn't pay any taxes in that, but let's take that out of the equation for the moment. So within the corporation, you've decided to invest there, you're retaining all that capital. Now you're starting to get dividend payments from the stocks that you invested in, or you have some growth and things. What sort of tax rates are you facing there? So capital gains is capital gains. So you get taxed at 50% of the income at the investment tax rate. But let's talk about maybe dividends within investments that you have within the corporation. That might be through mutual funds or whatnot. So that income will be taxed not at the small business tax rate, that 11% in BC that I just mentioned, or low small business corporate tax rates. Those tax rates are for active business income, and that's very specific. It's defined in the Income Tax Act. There's no avoiding it. If it's investment income, you're going to be taxed at investment income tax rates. So in the corporation, these can generally be higher than your personal tax rates. So the way the policy works is that they want to discourage companies from passive investments inside these corporations, so you get taxed a little bit higher than you would personally. And the reason for that is that you will get taxed there, and then once you pay that money out as a dividend to yourself personally, so it goes through the corporate veil, it gets its personal tax rate going, that's when you get a refundable tax sort of back for the corporation for actually putting that money. So they they kind of force your hand on that because you're getting taxed at that high rate. There's still the other factor to consider, which is how much capital you're retaining in the first place, but you will be taxed likely at a higher tax rate inside the corporation than you would be taxed personally. All right, the third factor to consider is what is the purpose of this investment? So if you have some excess funds maybe seasonally within your corporation and you don't want that cash to sit idle, investing inside the corporation might be a good idea. You want to keep quite liquid assets or short-term assets, not really high risk stuff, obviously. If you need that money for maybe slower periods of the year where you don't have as many sales, but you still want to keep staff on, or they're working on other projects or something like that. So I think in this scenario where you have short-term cash surpluses within your corporation, you'll want to make sure you keep that in the corporation. Do some smart investing within that is like short term, but just considering the timeline and not doing anything too risky with that money. So I think that's a clear-cut example where you would invest inside the corporation. If it's longer term investing or retirement planning that you're doing, we're back to sort of, do you do that in the corporation and you're considering, how much capital you're going to retain within the corp and what your tax rates are going to be on that investment income, which are sort of opposing forces there, or whether you distribute that money to yourself personally and use things like RRSPs and TFSAs to sort of shelter that investment income. So there's no real cut and dry way to think about this, but it is a factor that you do want to consider when thinking about whether to keep that in the corp. If it is short term for cash needs later, then maybe just keep that in the corp. Don't pay out and then pay back from personal back to corporate. All right, so the fourth factor to consider here when you're deciding whether to invest inside your corporation is what are some of the risk factors of holding those assets within the corporation. And what I mean by this is, are you running an active business with this corporation? Is there some legal liability that your customer might sue you? And if they were to sue you, they may have access to some of these assets that you're sort of holding on to maybe for retirement or something. So just something to be really cautious of when you invest inside the corporation, that you may be opening yourself up to some legal risk if you were to be sued and the plaintiff was successful in court. So just something to consider there if you're creating these large investment portfolios, that there can be overlap with the risk of the business that you're running. Some ways around this, there are legal protections in having a holdco, so holding some of those investments within a holding company or holding them personally. That may provide a buffer. I'm not a lawyer, but I know it does provide some level of protection, if not, definitely not 100%. But that is something that you will want to consider when holding a lot of investments inside your operating company. All right, so the sort of last one, I guess it's kind of 4.5, but and not many of our clients are quite here yet, but it does happen. So you'll want to really watch on the volume of investment income that you are producing within a corporation. So the way the small business deduction rules work is that you get low corporate tax rates for being a small business. But one of the things that can claw back this small business deduction, these really low corporate tax rates that you get, is the amount of investment income that you produce within that corporation or any other corporations that you own. So if you're over $50,000 in passive income in a year, you're going to start to claw back this small business deduction, which is something we definitely want to avoid. It's totally gone by the time you hit $150,000 in passive income within your corporation. Then that small business deduction is completely gone for you. So it's just something to watch for, something to consider. Like I said, I don't see a lot of these. I don't see a lot of people producing that kind of income passively inside their small business, but it is something to watch for. And if you are thinking about, really creating a very large investment portfolio within your corporation, this is a big tripwire to watch out for. All right, so that's it. I hope that's been helpful for you to understand whether you should invest inside your corporation. I will say overall, for most scenarios, I say, it's not a great idea to invest inside that corporation. One, because you get the high corporate investment tax rates or passive income tax rates. So you want to watch for that. And there are other avenues like the RSP to retain the capital that you're kind of aiming for with that corporation. But if the scenario is just right and you want to hold that and you don't mind paying a little more investment income tax, knowing that you'll get that back eventually when you dividend it out to yourself personally, then it might be something to consider for yourself. But just know there's no like simple, I'm going to create this corporation. I think that's what people have stars in their eyes about, is that I'm going to create this corporation and get these really low tax rates, and this is a no-brainer. And then they incorporate and find out that, hey, you know what, that's actually not how these things work. So hopefully that's been helpful for you. If it has been helpful, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. And if you like content like this and are a small business owner yourself in Canada, please consider subscribing. We really appreciate all the support that we get. And if you have a particular scenario, one more ask, which is comment below on your particular scenario, or if I haven't covered a particular question that you have. We try to answer as many questions as we can, and really appreciate all your support. So thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.